Now, if you're going to name your car after an adjective, you better make sure it lives up to it. The automotive landscape is littered with embarrassing examples where this just hasn't happened. This is the new Skoda Superb Estate, and we're here today to find out whether it's, well, you know. Just before we get started, a quick little plug. This very Skoda Superb Estate is my long-term test car, and that means I'm keeping it for 6 months to find out what we really love about living with it day to day, and also maybe the little niggles that could be improved upon. Now, you can read all about this car's 6-month long-term updates every month in Diesel and Eco Car magazine, which you'll find in all good news agents like WH Smith's, or can be ordered online. So here we have the updated, facelifted Skoda Superb Estate for this model year. And this particular car is in SportLine Plus trim, which is pretty much the showiest, jazziest version of this car you get. There is a more luxurious trim level, but in terms of athleticism, this is as good as it looks. And I have to say, it is a good looking car. The reprofiled front and rear bumpers look great. The 19-inch alloys that this car sits on give it a nice sporting profile. And the Superb Estate's pin-sharp creases just lead your eye from nose to tail. I have to say, I think it's a pretty good-looking car. That extra layer of polish that Skoda have just worked in for this model year, things like those new LED lights and the Skoda badging tattooed across the back of the car, it elevates it up to the same sort of premium level as some other rivals. And yeah, I think no one looks at this car and thinks of it as a dowdy Skoda in the slightest. Another feature that I really like are the animated lighting signatures whenever you lock and unlock the car. It adds an element of theatre at dusk, even on something as practical and sensible as an estate car. Under the bonnet of this car is a new 2-litre diesel engine producing 187 brake horsepower and 400 newton metres of torque. Now, this is the most potent diesel option you can get in the Superb, and it's only available with this 7-speed automatic transmission. And I have to say, it's pretty good. It's silky smooth, it doesn't really let you know that it's going about its business, and particularly on a motorway cruise, I mean, it just gets on with it. And with the 7th gear, it means it's at low RPM when cruising, so refinement's pretty good. It will occasionally hand you a lumpy shift pottering about town, and that diesel engine does have a bit of turbo lag, but on the whole, for what it is designed for, which is, let's face it, a family hauler and a motorway cruiser, it fits that remit perfectly. It's quiet, it's serene, there's a nice strong dollop of torque from low down in the rev range for strong overtakes. It'll do 0 to 62 miles per hour in 8.4 seconds and go on to a top speed of 142 miles per hour. This powertrain never really leaves you feel wanting, even when you're fully laden with a boot full of stuff and 5 people. Speaking of refinement, you've also got to factor in that a SportLine Plus car has Sporty Er Suspension. Now, this is good through the corners, it reduces body roll, but my fear was actually that over lumps and bumps in the road it was going to be more unsettled, especially with these larger alloy wheels. But thanks to sensible engineering and some sensible sidewalls on those tyres, the ride is lovely, really nice and supple, and I have to say, it surprised me. I thought the firmer suspension was going to come with some sort of trade-off, but in fact, it doesn't. Nice and serene, it deals with our battered roads quite wonderfully, and on the motorway it's settled, doesn't feel too floaty. It strikes a really good happy medium between everything that you want from a suspension setup, really. The chassis as a whole is great. There's loads of grip, there's a real firm sense of, you know, refinement, solidity and security when you're behind the wheel. It's a lovely place to be, actually. I've done many hundreds of miles in this car, from the bottom of the country all the way to the top, and yeah, I never feel uncomfortable or frustrated about my environment in the slightest. And said environment is very lovely. The quality of materials in here is excellent. I love the SportLine Plus's sort of faux carbon touches. It adds a real premium element to the cabin. And also this trim level gets these lovely Alcantara sports seats that are really supportive. They're electrically operated, they're heated, and they're excellent for the long motorway haul. Something else that deserves particular praise is this 9.2-inch touchscreen display here. Really responsive, the graphics are nice and rich, there's no sort of basic element to it. There's lots of functionality. Digital radio functionality is really good in it, along with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And also it's got a nice sort of swipe gesture control element to it as well to go through menus should you not want to touch the screen whilst you're driving. So that's pretty cool. The Superb in general comes with loads of standard equipment, But this specification really is business class. I mean, it's just so well polished, it looks great, it feels upmarket. There's lots of recognisable Audi bits in this, which is no bad thing, maybe if you're an Audi driver and you're looking at your friend's Skoda. I love that you can option in this big digital display, which can display the map as you're driving through it in sort of the 3D cockpit type way. Again, very similar to what Audi does. Yeah, it's really nice in here. And that's before we even get on to the crown jewel of this car, which is just the sheer volume of space in here. I mean, our optional glass panoramic roof, which is very nice to have open on a summer's day, you know, accentuates how much space there is in here, but even without it, there is a vast, cavernous space for everybody to enjoy. I mean, you could have somebody who's 6'5" sat in the front and another 6'5" person sat directly behind them, and they would not be left wanting for space. Come to think of it, this might give the Mercedes-Benz S-Class a run for its money in terms of its sheer volume. Open the rear hatch and there's a gargantuan 660 litres of space on offer. Fold those rear seats flat and that expands to 1,950 litres. Which frankly rivals the Grand Canyon. It's got a nice square opening, nice flat floor. The space is ideal with loading up with dogs, of which I've done with 3 of them, or trips to the tip, or B&Q, or even moving house. I mean, I struggle to think of many vehicles that are as versatile as this in terms of the amount of space that they offer. It's really impressive because the Superb combines that executive nature with van-like practicality, and that's not to say those back there are sliding around on the floor with no windows, because there's Wi-Fi on this model to keep the kids quiet. Those seats back there are almost as comfortable as the ones up at the front, and barring a transmission hump in the middle, because you can get this car with all-wheel drive should you choose, you know, it's just an incredibly comfortable place to seat adults. Skoda has become famed for its simply clever touches, and this Superb Estate certainly isn't short of them. You'll find things like nice big chunky curry hooks in the boot to hang bags from. There's also a rechargeable torch light in the boot. If you find yourself caught short out in the rain, it does its usual trick of umbrellas in the doors. And on icy mornings, you can find an ice scraper inside the fuel filler cap should you have forgotten yours. By themselves, these little features don't add up to much, but together makes this Superb a really nice car to live with. It just goes to show that engineers have really sat down and thought about who and how people will use their product. A lot of manufacturers might ignore these sorts of things, possibly on a cost basis. Do you really need an ice scraper? Do you really need a torch? But it's things like that that make Skoda the brand, the thinking man's Audi. The Skoda Superb Estate is without question the best all-round estate car money can buy today, and I don't say that lightly because there's some really strong competition out there. But when you factor everything in, like value for money, the sheer practicality of the car, the refinement, the amount of standard equipment that you can have on base vehicles, the, you know, general quite executive premium looks of the car, the fact that Skoda have just made such an effort with all of the little details. Sure, it's not the most engaging driver's car out there, not by a long shot. But for somebody who needs to trawl the motorways, carry the family and a dog, and do that comfortably in a vehicle that feels like it's worth its money, you can't beat it. The Skoda Superb Estate range starts at £25,645.